Om Sachidananda Sharanam Om Shri Guru Kripahi Kevalam Om Shri Guru Sharanagato Shanti Shanti Shanti. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Everyone watching in television land, on your computers, and all of those who are watching in the living room. So glad to see you all. I'm so glad you're all here to honor Reverend Mother Srimata Gayatri Devi. Gayatri named after the famous mantram, the Gayatri mantram. She was born at dawn, and she was our guru, my guru, Swami Himsananda's guru, Kathakali's guru. Several of us are so privileged to and so graced to have had her be our spiritual teacher. But a guru is much deeper even than that. It's the closest relationship that we can have as human beings. It's an eternal relationship. It's a love that is eternal. It is a guidance and a care that goes on eternally. It is a relationship between two souls. Without her, we wouldn't be here, all of us. It was she who built this temple on our 50th anniversary. It was she who was the disciple of Swami Paramananda and was chosen by him to carry on his work. We have so much for which to be grateful. So many of you didn't have the opportunity to meet her. But that doesn't matter, because you can meet her now. Because there is no such thing as death. In Vedanta, we talk about leaving the body, or laying the physical body down. And both she and Swami Paramananda often spoke about the fact that the body is a fetter in many ways. It stands in the way of greater and greater service, more expanded service. So we know that those who have dedicated their lives as what we might call the bodhisattva ideal. In Buddhism, we talk about bodhisattvas, and these are souls who are so evolved that they have the pull even, the right even, to merge completely in the divine bliss. And yet they choose not to. They choose to not make that step so that they can turn and give a helping hand to all of those who are progressing and evolving spiritually. So today you can ask her blessing. Today you can ask her guidance. Today you can ask to know her better. Because she is alive. She is, as Sri Ramakrishna said, just in another room. Just in a different dimension. Not confined in this one small body which stays in one location. There's a wonderful book about her called One Life's Pilgrimage. If you haven't read it, it tells more about her life and also has some of her teachings. It's hard, you know, I was with Mataji for 15 years, and I have so many memories. It's hard to know. I was thinking about what to share. I think of Mataji here at Vedanta Center. I think of Mataji in Ananda Ashrama in California. I think of her in India. I think of her in Europe, visiting her devotees and groups there. I think of her of the many months we spent together in retreat. There are just so many places to have memories, wonderful memories. Of course, the relationship goes on. The relationship is as current as this very moment. So let me just give you a little context before I share some of her teachings. That is, she was born on October 12, 1906 in a small village called Banaripara, which is near Dhaka in what is now called Bangladesh, but was East Bengal at the time when she was born, part of the British Empire. And she was born into a family of 18 children. And her parents have a role to play in the Ramakrishna Leela, because her father was Swami Paramananda's elder brother. And he was what we call here in the United States a lawyer. And he never was wealthy because he welcomed a lot of clients who couldn't pay him. And his wife was Mataji's mother, who was about the same age as Swami Paramananda, who was her brother-in-law, about her same age. Mataji's father has the distinction of being the one who confronted Swami Vivekananda and said that Swami Paramananda's life he would be much more important if he wouldn't join the order, if he wouldn't become a monk, that he was smart, intelligent, good-looking, he could be anything. Of course, he rued the day for the rest of his life that he had done that. It was part of the Leela. Swami Vivekananda said to Swamiji's brother, but he'll be greater than that. He'll be greater than anything he could have done. Her mother, on the day that the young Suresh, who became Swami Paramananda, ran away from home, wanted to run away from home, it was Mataji's mother who held the keys to the kingdom. The whole estate that they lived on in Banaripara, where Swami Paramananda was also born, the gates were locked every night. And so she understood that he wanted to run away and join the order. He was 17. He was not yet legally an adult. So she let him out. And he ran away, and the rest is history. He became a monk, became Swami Vivekananda's youngest monastic disciple. He came here to the United States in 1906. He founded the Vedanta Center of Boston in 1909, the Ananda Ashrama in La Crescenta in 1923, this Ananda Ashrama here in Cohasset in 1929, and numerous Vedanta groups all across the country and in Europe. So he would lecture everywhere. Now Mataji, the youngest of 18 children, 16 of whom lived to maturity, every one of them went to college, except for Mataji. Every one of them had distinguished careers. One became a noted journalist. Another became in charge of the tigers, protection of the tigers in India and the great national parks. Another one became a famous movie star who was known at that time by one name. You know, we know Cher. Well, there was Arundhati. And she was very famous all over India, and it was she who sang the great devotional song on the occasion of Mahatma Gandhi's funeral, broadcast over all India radio. Another one earned her PhD after raising 5 children. They were very distinguished. And our Ma, which means mother in Sanskrit, or Mataji, which means revered, beloved mother in Sanskrit. She was the 3rd eldest of the 18, and she was called Amadi or Borodi, Amadi meaning jolly one, Borodi being old one, because she seemed like an old soul even then. She loved to read, she loved nature, and she loved being alone, way before Greta Garbo. I want to be alone. She was a mystic. But with that many children, she always had a baby on each hip. She loved children. And she was very good at school. She attended Eden High School in Dhaka. And she always talked about her lady principal, Miss Sarabji. I'll always remember Miss Sarabji. And her best friend was Prabha, whom I had a chance to meet in Calcutta. And Prabha told me that there was always something special about Mataji. That she was wonderful in schoolwork, very bright, excellent in Sanskrit studies, knew English fluently as well as Bengali. But there was something that kind of always set her apart. There was part of her that she withheld, a reserve, and a deep well of spirituality even as a young woman. Well, as Mataji said to us, her parents tricked her. They said that their guru, their family guru, wished that she be given away in marriage. Now, she didn't want to be married. She wanted to join Swami Paramananda's work. As a very young girl, she heard about, she received the letters and the reports about how the work was going in this country. And she wanted to become the youngest of his monastic members. She wanted to become the first Indian woman in the work, because they were all Western women who were leading the work, and all of them were old enough to be her mother. Well, anyway, a marriage was arranged with a very nice young man, whom she always called the marriage partner. We didn't know his name for a long time. The marriage partner this, the marriage partner that. So she was given in marriage. The night before the wedding, however, Swami Paramananda sent a telegram saying, "Stop the wedding," because he hadn't received her letter in time. So she went to her father, and her father said, "Well, Gayatri, what do you want me to do? Shall we stop the wedding?" Which would have been a very dishonorable thing for the family, because the wedding was a days-long celebration. And the groom and the groom's family had already arrived. And Mataji said, "No, we go forward with the wedding." So she was with the marriage partner for 3 years. And they lived mostly in Burma, because he was involved in the manufacture and the engineering of railway ties. And then he became ill. She nursed him. He died. And then she was free. But she wasn't free because she belonged now, according to Hindu tradition, in her husband's family. And they loved her. Unlike in so many of the sort of old-fashioned books that we read about where the mother-in-law is a tyrant, her mother-in-law loved her, and her mother-in-law was not a tyrant. So when they lost their son, they were really happy to still have their daughter-in-law. So she felt really, really torn, because she really, really wanted to come to the United States and help in this work. And she really, really, really felt that she didn't want to provide another loss for her family, the family in which she had married into. So Swami Paramananda came back to India, and he left the decision entirely up to her. And it was an agonizing decision. And finally, at the very last minute, when he had to book passage, he said, "Well, Gayatri," and she said, I'll come with you. So on the way over, she was stubborn. She didn't want to speak English. He only wanted to speak English with her. But he taught her a lot of things on the trip over. She came here, first to California, at Ananda Ashrama. And he brought her up to speed on the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita. And she wasn't there for more than a few months before he put her on the platform to teach the Thursday night classes on the Upanishads. But it was in 1940 when Swami Paramananda passed away suddenly, right here, right outside Swamiji's garden, that Mataji was 33, and upon her shoulders was placed the leadership of all of Swami Paramananda's work. And she did it with tremendous fortitude for 55 years. And she said one of the things that was her greatest blessing is that she had enthusiasm. You know, being in community for 69 years is a long haul. Doing anything for 69 years is a long haul. Speaking every Sunday from the platform, speaking every Thursday from the platform. Tending to all the souls that came under her watchful care. Traveling to all of the different Vedanta groups that Swami Paramananda had started, both here in the United States and in Europe. Going to India to inspire the wonderful work that her cousin Charashila Devi started, our 2 ashramas there, which we still have. Charashila Devi was the daughter of another one of Swami Paramananda's sisters. When I think about how I first met Ma, we all have our first meeting stories, because this was a meeting that changed my life entirely. It was April 3rd, 1980. It was Holy Thursday, which we called Maundy Thursday in those days, the English terminology for that day. And I'd been looking around for a meditation group. There weren't that many in those days. And I'd heard about Ananda Ashram. I'd gone to different churches that in the weeks preceding, and they didn't do it for me. Well, they didn't have meditation groups either. And then I remembered Ananda Ashrama, because I had been taken there by my mother when I was 10 for a Sunday service. Sister Doya was the speaker. And so I called up to see if they were going to have some sort of something that week. They said yes, there would be a service on Maundy Thursday at 8 o'clock, class service. And so I went, and I sat in the front row, right where Ahimsa is sitting, only in California. And in those days, Mataji used to come up the side aisle. And when she turned, and I saw her face, I knew then it was the culmination of my entire spiritual search. See, when I was 16, I had seen her face as she would be that night. And that seeing, which I thought at the time was St. Teresa of Avila, so I had been immersed in that. And then when I saw her, it was the same face. And after the class, I said, I've got to talk to you. And the next day was Good Friday. She said, after the service on Good Friday, we'll meet. And so we went into her study, and we talked. And at the end, I had heard that you're supposed to ask a holy person for their blessing. And I said, Ma, would you please give me your blessing? And she said, why should I give you my blessing? You have all my love. And so it was all very simple. Nothing coincidental. My next visit with her, the second one, was outside her bedroom, just outside the gate there. And I was blown away by the fact that when I came through the gate, she was sitting outside in a lawn chair, and there was another one there for me. And the first word she said to me was, "Hi." And I said, "Hi." And it was like we carried on a relationship that we'd always had. When I was thinking too of, in preparation for this day, I was thinking about how did Ma teach us? You know, she affected all of us who came into her orbit. She changed our lives. She transformed us. Not by rules, not by some cookie cutter one size fits all. But the primary thing she did was to provide an example. I was thinking a lot about that. She lived her life. And somehow we all fell into the rhythm of it. For her, always and always and always, under all circumstances, the divine came first. Always. It was not a question, not an issue, not a what shall I do next? It was divine first. Examples of that are that when she first awakened in the morning, she always wanted to see the face of the sun, a symbol of the divine, of light. Her first action was always to spend time in meditation at her altar. And she didn't deviate from that. Oh, she had, you know, on her days, Monday was always a retreat day for her that she kept in silence. So she had a lot of time at her altar. On Friday morning, she always took in silence. She had plenty of time at her altar. But on days that she was at the ashramas, she spent the time she needed. Her entire consciousness was the divine. Oh, she did her work. She worked with all of us. She was very involved in the shrine and the temple, the flowers, the worship, the atmosphere of the ashramas. She never chatted. When she spoke, she would tell stories about our past. She would tell about Swami Paramananda, her years with Swami Paramananda, her meeting with some of the direct disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, and the other great ones with whom she came in contact. She'd tell about the founding of the ashramas, and the sisters. She would sing. She knew so many of the Tagore songs and the great devotional songs that were classics. We've had a lot of professional Tagore singers in our life, but they had to use a big book to remember the words. Mataji knew them all by heart. And I've had on more than one occasion have one of these wonderful Tagore singers who were wonderful and very devoted get lost or forget the lines. And they would look to Ma, and she'd fill right in with what the words were. On a Sunday service, she would always begin the service singing a Tagore song and translating it. She spoke English better than we who are native English speakers do. So eloquent, such beautiful writing, such beautiful speech. But all from devotion, all from the reality of her experience, which was at one-ment with the divine. And what was so amazing about Mataji, she made it seem so easy that we could do it too. She said, you know, it's not about preaching. It's about quickening. It's about inspiring. It's about giving each one that inner charge, you might say, to be able to feel the divine a little bit closer and know that it's there for us too, that we can do it too. She was absolutely fearless. Absolutely fearless. We had a chimney fire one night. Big chimney fire. And fire people came. And we all went outside while the firemen were doing their work. And Mataji said, aren't those flames, aren't those sparks just beautiful coming out of the chimney? She wasn't afraid of the consequences. Thankfully, there were none. But she wasn't afraid of the vicissitudes of aging either. She got old. She was 89. The body got old and frail. She never ate much anyway. But her relationship with the divine was so solid that she had absolute 1,000,000% trust in the divine. She had learned to surrender. And whatever arose, and I think this is, I was just stopped dead really in my tracks when I read from this guidance that she had given me many years ago. And that is that when she surrendered to the divine and something arose, that she didn't even wish it were different. Gosh, that's big, isn't it? She was in a terrible automobile accident a few years before she left her body. And then she had to have a hip replaced as a result of that later. And then she had congestive heart failure. So, I mean, she felt the vicissitudes of age. Without complaint. And I wouldn't even wish that it were different. Each stage of our life has something to give. One of the great teachings, her teaching, is about change and how difficult change is for us as human beings. We want things to stay the same if they're going well. There's something in us that resists change, even if it's good change. She quoted Thomas Carlyle, who was a Scottish philosopher. Well, before that, she quoted Ralph Waldo Emerson, whom she did several times on several occasions. You know, the one about who you are speaks so loudly I can't hear a word you say. The other one, this one, is, let us learn that we are here not to work, but to be worked upon. That's what life does to us. It works upon us. Works upon us like a sculptor works upon us. Refines us. It purifies the alloys that are within us, our fears, our insecurities, our old habits that cause us suffering, but they're comfortable old habits. We like them. They're like old slippers, and we don't want to change them, even when they get in our way, even when they cause us to suffer unnecessarily. She said that change is the law of life. And what happens seems that so many of our fears, when change arises, it's that we're afraid we're going to lose something that we really wish would stay, would be permanent. But it's change. It's changes that brought us to where we are today. And it's further changes that are going to take us even further. And then she quoted Thomas Carlyle, who was a Scottish theologian and philosopher. And he said, "Today is not yesterday. We ourselves change. How then can our actions, our works, our thoughts, if they're not always to be the best, continue the same? Change indeed is painful, yet ever needful." Mataji reminded us that life is a series of changes, and that we need to learn to accept them with understanding so that we can go forward and upward and continue to grow. When a change comes, that we don't need to feel disheartened or fearful or that we're being punished. We accept. She accepted. She showed us the strength of acceptance. And I'm talking about the kinds of changes that bring growth. I want to quote from two Buddhist teachers here. One is Koshin Pali Ellison. "Whatever is happening right now is exactly what we need to be receptive to. What's arising for you, moment by moment, in this moment, is exactly our practice." That makes life a little more simple, doesn't it? That's what arising right now is our spiritual practice. This is what we work on in ourselves. This is what our challenge is. This is what our opportunity for growth arises from. And the other one is from someone you know well, Pema Chodron. It can be hard to tell what's a failure and what's just something that is shifting your life in a different direction. In other words, failure can be the portal to creativity, to learning something new, to having a fresh perspective. So change. Imagine accepting a change without any sense of loss. That's what she learned to do, to accept on that level. We need experiences. We need lots and lots of experiences, all kinds of different experiences, in order to have real knowledge and deep understanding. And so Mataji taught that circumstances and our particular destiny combine in order to be able to give us those experiences that we need. And the way we meet those experiences shows the degree of our enlightenment at the time. We grow by becoming consciously aware of that which dwells within us, each and every one of us. When we consciously step on the path, the spiritual path to interior growth. The one who dwells within us is called in the Upanishads that with a capital T. And why is it called that with a capital T? In order not to contain it, in order not to define it, because the divine is indefinable. It's uncontainable. The minute we try to define the divine, that's when we limit it. I remember that little story of a kindergarten teacher who looked at one of her children's paintings, and she said, "What is that?" And she said, "That's God." And she said, "But nobody knows what God looks like." She said, "Well, they will now." But we each have our own definition of the divine. We each have our own picture of the divine. We each have our own impression of the divine. Whether we call it God, ultimate reality, the higher power, the essence, divine wisdom, divine love. Vedanta teaches us that instead of God, a distant God, a transcendent God, creating us and creating all of the things in nature, those things around us. Vedanta teaches us that it is out of the divine that all this is manifested. That all is God. That everything contains God. And yet God is larger than that. God is vast. But yet all is Brahman, which is the Sanskrit word for God, the Absolute. And that once we've experienced the divine as residing in every one of us and in all living beings, but also in everything around us. Once we experience that, Ma says, then we are a knower. That there is nothing else but the divine. And that our very essence is the divine. The very core of our being, our soul, is the divine, the absolute, the essence, the higher power. And you say, but what about me? The meanness of me. Not meanness, me-ness. Be very careful about that. The meanness, the little part of myself, my personality. The one that's kind of going through life doing the best we can. Sometimes noble, sometimes not quite so. Questioning, doubting, struggling with circumstances, people, life, pandemics, catastrophic earth crises. You know, all the things that we have on our plate right now. Doing the best we can. Striving for certainty, striving for trust in the divine. As the proverb says, trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not unto your own understanding, in all your ways acknowledge Him and He will direct your path. That's the way Ma lived. That's why she was fearless. So there's a part of ourselves called the jiva in Sanskrit, J-I-V-A, which is the learning part of ourself. The very essence of ourself is God. And when we become aware of the fact that God really exists in each one of us, really, really God, real God, vast God, but the divine who invites us into intimate relationship at the same time, who knows us, who cares for us, who loves us unconditionally and is with us every step of the way, The difference is that this is going on. He's with us every step of the way. The difference is we don't know He's with us every step of the way, and we don't turn to Him. We're not aware of Him. And we're unaware that He is in everything around us. Everything we touch, everything we handle. I don't know how many of you are old enough to remember Dr. Albert Schweitzer. Good, some of you are nodding. You know who he is. But for those of you who don't, he was quite a remarkable man. He was born in Alsace-Lorraine, which is on the German-French border. And he became a medical doctor, a physician. He was also one of the great organists, great musicologist and scholar of music. He was a philosopher and a theologian. Kind of an all-around guy. He also, by the way, won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1952 for his philosophy of life called reverence for life. Reverence for life. And once we become aware that the divine is all that is, we look around at ourselves and at other people and say, well, how can they be? After all, this really stretches my credibility that that person can possibly have divine nature at the very core. Especially not that person. I don't want that person to have it. But we all do. Reverence for life. And reverence for the fact that all is alive on some level. All has consciousness on some level. The divine suffuses everything. So that's a very beautiful thought to hold in our heads, but it's still a theory until we experience it for ourselves. And sometimes we experience at the oddest moments. That's why it's so necessary and part of our spiritual practice to place ourselves in those circumstances where it's likely to happen. I love nature. I love looking out at the garden. I love dawn and sunset and the starry, starry sky, clouds, trees, flowers, birds. But Mataji spent time alone. With the alone is to be alone with God, she said. So reverence for life. Sri Ramakrishna was walking in Dakshineswar and saw one of the shrine workers picking flowers for the shrine worship and doing it roughly and casually. And he said, "Don't. I've seen with my own eyes that all of this is the manifestation of the divine." His words were, "All is that. Don't be rough. Be more reverent and sensitive when you touch something." That's why Mataji would, said to me one time, I'm sure we've all had the experience, but I just remember this one day when she came back from her retreat on a Wednesday evening. And there was a routine for unloading the coolers that came from Laguna or from Yarmouth, of the food and the utensils and those kinds of things, and her flowers from the flower vases, and this raffia bag that she went back and forth with her work that she had to do. So I emptied that raffia bag and I put it in the corner where it lived, but I put it with I was casual, I just put it in the corner. Nicely, symmetrically. And she said, "Ma," she said, "do you want your face in the corner?" She said, "Turn the bag around so that its design, its face would be facing out." That's the sensibility that she had. You know, when she did flowers, when she organized her medicine bottles in her medicine cabinet, each bottle had its own space. She said, every human being needs space. Every living being, everything needs space and attention. So everything had its space. Everything was put mindfully, not just crowded into the medicine cabinet wherever to go, but this bottle has a sensibility, and therefore it goes there, and the next one goes next to it, but not touching. You know that saying of St. Dominic, peace is the tranquility of order. We talk about that in April a lot, and May, I think. Simplicity and purity of heart. That one where we all clean out our cars and drawers and closets. You know that one, simplifying our lives. And I always mention that wonderful saying of St. Dominic, peace is the tranquility of order. Mataji's possessions were in perfect order. Everything had their place. So they all were living peacefully. So she didn't, you know, go around like a scold. We had her example. And we had the fact that this was just the way things were. It was done in the shrine, it was done in the kitchen, it was done in her quarters, it was done in the living room, it was everywhere. There was a unity, a steadiness. And we imbibed it. We fell into that rhythm of which we are grateful. And so, let us live accepting the changes as opportunities for growth, and have reverence for our life, reverence for the livingness of all that is around us, and know that the divine is within us, accessible, inviting, supporting, and present. Amen. Swaha.
I would be nothing without you.
I think all of us who knew Ma and know Ma, her great gift is that she loved each and every one of us unconditionally. We were all very different. She called us her assorted nuts and chews. Like See's candy, you can get assorted nuts and chews, or you can get soft centers. We were the assorted nuts and chews. I'll see you next Sunday, which is September 19th. Same time, same station, right here in the temple. And we wish a blessed Yom Kippur to our Jewish brothers and sisters. Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, begins on Wednesday at sunset. Girija, Sydney Burrows, will be conducting the class on the Bhagavad Gita this coming Thursday evening at 7 o'clock. And I want to thank you so much for using this cloth from Ma. This is made by our own girls at our own ashram in Naktala in Calcutta. So that's really special to use that. Thank you. And refreshments will be outside today. It's a gorgeous day, isn't it? A perfect day. Remember that the theme for this month is selfless love and devotion. That's certainly what Mataji gave to this community for 69 years, 55 of which was as head of the work. And remember from the Bhagavad Gita, the verse that I suggested we all memorize. Fill your mind with me, be my devotee, worship me and bow down to me, meaning surrender. Thus you shall attain me. Truly I promise you, for you especially, are dear to me. Today, September 12th, steadfastness, love, unselfish devotion, and unfaltering loyalty to the ideal, meaning the divine. These are the blessed qualities essential to spiritual attainment. And lines to memorize from one of Swami Paramananda's poems. You alone can save us from the tyranny of the small self and restore us unto us selfless loving kindness, whose fragrance brings life and healing. And the lesson, the small concerns of the little self are often detrimental. Try to cultivate selfless love, steadfastness, and loyalty, and a new world will open before you. These qualities cannot flourish in the soil of selfishness. They do not come to those who are slaves of themselves. They are to be found only in those who have learned to turn within and listen to the inner voice of the soul. Infinite being, make your presence felt in my soul, that I may know you as the embodiment of all blessedness. Inspire me with love and wholeness. Cleanse my nature of all vanity and self-interest. Unfold my spiritual insight. That I may realize you both within and without. Free my heart from all inharmony, and keep me ever in your peace. May God the Absolute, one without a second, the one in whom we live and move and have our being, the one God who is called by many names, Christ of the Christians, Allah of the Muslims, Hashem of the Jewish people, Ahura Mazda of the Zoroastrians, Buddha of the Buddhists, Shangdi of the Chinese, the Great Spirit of the Native Americans, Brahman, the Divine Mother, the Infinite and All-Abiding Spirit of the Hindus. May you, who are our Mother, Father, Friend, Beloved, Companion, and Guide, grant unto us all peace and blessing. Peace, peace, peace be unto us and unto all living beings.